All right, guys. I know it's hard to read because it's so small, but my talk's on badge hunting. All right. Everybody in here, anybody in the hangout room who's seeing this at all, come on in here. There's a bunch of extra seats. You can see it better. It's going to be fun. I'm going to tell some stories. We're going to talk about badges for like 40 minutes. So, I mean, how can that be bad? So, first of all, like Michael was saying, you guys all know it because you're here and you have a little pamphlet. My name's Allan Peters. I'm Chief Creative Officer at Peters Design Company. And partner, it's a company of two, myself and my wife. She's an amazing writer. I do the graphic designs. We mesh and do business together. First of all, before I get too much into anything, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Ishmael, to Jill, Kyle, Kendall, for Micah, for everybody at the front desk out there, all you people for taking the time to come out here and spend some time listening to me talking about going and finding little treasures on pianos and in little museums all over the country. And so here's the lowdown. Here's kind of the general gist of what we're going to talk about. This isn't going to be my usual portfolio show talk where I'm like, here's all my work and here's some great stories about it. Instead, this is going to be a chance for me to share a bunch of really good secrets with you, stuff that's taken me over 10 years in the business to figure out, researching other companies, figuring out how other people are doing it, listening to a lot of lectures, a lot of podcasts, and just a lot of trial and error working with clients. So first, I'm going to start off by talking about how my passions fuel my art. Second, I'm going to virtually take you on badge hunting to two cities, small little cities trapped in time. Third, I'm going to walk you through my logo design process, and we'll apply what we learned badge hunting. So rather than just saying hey, here's a bunch of stuff I found, it'll also be and here's how I used it in a real client project, and here's how I got from point A to point B in a way that was really simple for my clients to understand and easy to sell. And fourth, we're going to talk about making badges on the bus. If anybody knows what that's all about, that's cool. And last, we're going to wrap up with the future of badge hunting. Where could this go? So two styles. If you know me and you're familiar with my work, you'll know I have two distinct styles. Obviously, there's stuff in the middle, but there's stuff way over here and stuff way over on the other side. I got a clicker. So first style, number one, minimalism. And so very conceptually strong minimalism, taking something like an apple and a heart, and how do you put it together in the most minimal way, and just start out with something a little bit more complicated, and you shave away and distill it down. How can you do it simpler? How can you make a heart that's just two circles in this 45-degree angle, and then take that same shape, stretch it out, make these little points, and make it basically the whole thing's based out of a few right angles, some sharp points and circles. Really basic, right? And how do you do these minimal things to distill it down to an idea that makes sense? A couple of shapes. You can figure out it's a pencil, but it's just a couple of squares. And then always putting a twist on it to keep the elements fresh. So taking something like that target bullseye, just the dot and the ring, and how do you make something without any target bullseye in it that's still target at a glance? So the other side, the other stuff I like to do is the polar opposite of minimalism. And so it's stuff like this. And it's all about taking more and more elements, adding stuff that doesn't even need to be in there, just putting in there as design elements like that West Coast makers and miners along the top. More than anything, that's just a nice little, if you blur your eyes, and if it's 1 inch by 1 inch, you're not even able to read that. Who knows if it will even print good. But it's just there as this nice little line that'll reflect the type at the bottom. It balances out. It says Portland. Why do you need PDX? You don't need it twice, but we put it in there because it's a design element, and it just becomes a shape, and they all balance out, and it makes this really pretty nostalgic thing that has a heritage of work from the 40s and 50s when everybody wasn't as influenced by these great designers and thinkers like Saul Bass and Paul Rand. And instead, they're just kind of making it up as they go and trying to figure it out and being inspired by these people, earlier on. And they're learning as they go. And the nice thing about it, there's there's just like a lot more room to be creative because you have more elements to work with. You aren't forced to like, believe me, I like making the really simple stuff, but I like making this stuff too. I like the balance. And so switching up a little, let's talk about passions. My passions equal my art. So what I do inspires what I make. So this guy, Jesus Christ, God is the great artist that made all the artists. So any awesome artist that you've ever met, he made them. He made this whole thing, this big, awesome auditorium, this world, everything in it, the stars and the moon. And we're just lucky to be a part of it. It makes me happy. And so I make art that's inspired by that. Stuff for my church, stuff for my house, stuff for social media, whatever. My second major passion, we're looking really good there. My wife and I hanging out in New York in Central Park. She is the love of my life. She is the most talented person I've ever met. She's able to balance the very analytical, like project management side with this extremely creative writing side. And obviously, she's also my business partner. And I like to make art for her, anniversary cards and pretty stuff like that. Stuff with lots of words on it. And this is my oldest son. His name's Matthew. He's 6 years old, and he's full of curiosity and creativity. And when he was born, I made him this birth announcement with 54 words, all mixed up in there. And this is a while ago. This is 2010. And so I had been doing the badge thing and this more complex style for a couple years at this point. And I was still kind of figuring it out. And we had another little boy. His name's Luke. And he turns 4 the day we get home from circles, which is pretty exciting. And he's full of passion and excitement and love. And when he was born, I made this badge. So it's kind of like this, I had to make him one too. And there's a lot more geometry in this, a lot of custom type. The custom shape's based off the custom type. And you can kind of see this evolution, this progression happening. And our newest addition, Joshua, he's 1 year old, and he's here today, and he's taking his, he smiles all the time, and he's starting to walk, and he's a fun little guy. And so when he was born about a year ago, I made this for him. And it's a little bit more organic. You're taking a font like, I think it's based off Eloquent, and then taking those ball terminals, making them more into leaves, adding this beautiful inline shape, and it starts feeling very European or Norwegian kind of. It has a fun feel to it. It's like a live growth. So passions, Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. I don't know if I mentioned that. I like Minnesota. And I make art about Minnesota. State Plates project, I don't know if you guys ever heard about that one, but 50 designers from around the country each did a reimagining of the license plate from their state. And so this is mine. Paul and Babe on the last slide. We got Paul and Babe right there, right? And what's bigger than Minnesota? America. I love America, right? Who doesn't? We're in America. You guys all like America, I hope. And I love to rep the Stars and Stripes as well. I made a lot of art. The great thing, you make art about America. In America, people are like, yeah, I'm from America. I like that. So that's good. And I like the earth. And in a different kind of way, though, we've got one planet, and we got to take care of it, recycle, compost, drive less, bike more. I got all these things. Use less, grow your own food, stay home, grow trees, love your planet. It's a good place, right? We all live here. We're stuck here. Let's make it nice. And so I made a lot of like interesting social posts and stuff like that, promoting love of our earth and like little tips and hints and stuff. I like graphic design. Surprise. And I've made some social posts pumping up graphic design, and design is equal parts idea and craft. Design is how we connect. There's so many good things about it. I've made more of these too. Like old video games. I don't know. I like how simple they are. I like the simple art and the simple music. It's that minimal side of me, the other side, right? where I like things just really basic. And I've made a lot of art about video games. I did a Zelda poster show and all sorts of fun stuff like that. My latest, this N16 semi-automatic assault zapper. Got to get that one printed. When I was a young designer coming up in school, my early jobs, I always aspired to work on Target. I always wanted to work at Target or on Target or touch it in some way. I always thought it was a great brand. And I loved how simple the logo was, just a circle and a ring around it. Symmetrical, you can rotate it. It always looks exactly the same. And in 2010, I got a chance to work there, and I worked there for 5 years, and I loved it very much. And I still love the brand. And over my lunch breaks even, I'd make art just for the heck of it, based off the bullseye. I did a lot of stuff there, not because I had to, but because I thought it would be a cool thing for the brand to evolve it. Whether it was art or whether it was coming up with a new idea or innovative idea that they could use. I like speaking. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. And I've been blessed to speak at a lot of really cool places. That one was down in Houston, over on Facebook, Disney, and made some art about that. This poster, it was about how a near-fatal injury was a catalyst that fed my creativity, changed my career, changed my life, changed me as a husband and as a man. And I like modern art. It's kind of a stupid picture of me in Chicago, but it inspires stuff I make. You get the point. I like stuff, and I make art about it. I do it all the time. My wife homeschools our children. I contribute, as much as I can. I read a lot to them. I go on field trips with them. She leads the charge, obviously. But I did these prints for Inch by Inch recently, and they were inspired by our family's love of learning. Drawing. I probably all like drawing in here. I like drawing a lot. It's always been my passion. I always wanted to find some job, someplace, in some way where I got to draw every day for a living. I went to college originally with a major in drawing. I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. And so I ended up changing to graphic design when I figured I was like, oh, this thing I get to draw still, but there's money involved. And I've made a lot of, based off the drawing, I've made a ton of metaphorical pencil art. There was a year-long period there, one of my last, probably 2 years ago, where I did I don't know, it feels like at least 20 different pencil, people, it was kind of ridiculous at one point. I was like, okay, I gotta stop the pencil thing. I like biking. It's a great way to get around. It's good for the earth. It's thrilling. It's fun going really fast. And I made a lot of bike posters for Art Crank over the years. I've been doing it since the second year they did it in Minneapolis. And this is my favorite one I ever did. Just black and white, no other colors, high contrast, burns your retinas out a little bit. If you're scrolling on a phone, you're like, ah! But it looks fast, and it's very geometric. And then the last one, and this is going to be for the rest of the talk, this is kind of what I'm talking about, is badge hunting. And rather than showing one slide that's so I like badge hunting, I like making art off it, the whole rest of the thing is going to be on it. Modern Americans crave craftsmanship. So that's my grandpa on the left there. And he's walking down Hennepin Avenue in Minneapolis. Beautiful WIT sign in the background. This sign on the right is also from Minneapolis back in the day. It doesn't exist anymore. None of those signs do. But you can look at that and you can see that that's all custom lettered. Even you look at the details on that the sign's custom made. There's something really special and handcrafted and beautiful about it. It's one of a kind. There's nothing else like it. And nowadays, that craft isn't necessarily worth the price that people are willing to pay for most of the time. They're like, I get something good enough. It's just plastic pressed. And obviously, before computers, design took time. It took time. It took time to do revisions. It took time to do everything. You couldn't just kick something back over the internet 20 minutes later, an hour later. You had to go reset the type, or you had to go back and re-rubylith. I don't know. I didn't do that back then. I don't know all the exact details. But every piece of the design was considered, and you couldn't just type it out really quick. You had to lay it out, and you had to think about how everything was fitting together. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation versus imitation, because so take a look at these two things. My buddy just sent me that one on the right the other day, like a week ago, and he was in Winter Park doing some skiing. And he's like, oh, check this out. It looks exactly like yours, kind of. And so you look at that, and you're like, okay, looks like they kind of traced it. They mimicked the type a bit. And you're like, was that person trying to, like, do you think they're thinking, like, oh, I'm just going to, they're not trying to be hurtful or anything like that. What they're doing is they're like, okay, I have this deadline. I have to kick out 10 t-shirt designs, and I got to do it in 2 hours because I'm only getting paid this much to do it, and I got to get this other project done. Okay, I'm going to pop on Pinterest or Found or wherever they're going to go. I'm going to just quickly scan these things, throw them on a mood board, and like, okay, I can make that into something, and I can change the colors on this, tweak the fonts a little bit on that one, trace this thing. And they're making it extremely fast, and the result is something that where you're just copying something that already exists, and it's not quite as awesome. So what is innovation? Should everything we design be 100% original? Is that what I'm saying? No, that's not what I'm saying. Innovation, like Dyson, he didn't invent the vacuum. The vacuum was already there, but he put that ball on the bottom of it, makes so you can go underneath the sides of things and pivots better, and he took something that already exists and he made it better. So that's what innovation is. It's just taking something that pisses you off and fixing the problem. Something that's bugging you. I don't like how this works. And so with this talk, I'm going to be totally transparent. These are the exact badges I was inspired by to make this badge. And you can see, like, okay, so there's some type and shape happening. I can see this overlap Venn diagram thing happening up there. And you can see how it's like the term standing on the shoulder as the giants. You're taking a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from there. But then I'm applying things that I like and personal preferences to it, and all of a sudden, it is something new. It's not 100% original. It's based off history. So here's where it gets fun. We're going to go hunting, and virtually or whatever, but I thought this would be really fun. Over the last year or so, Maria and I have been doing some badge hunting, doing some digging, and I haven't posted any of it. And I've been saving it off for this talk, so I can kind of walk you guys through the things that I find and what I like about them, and we'll go through it kind of down and dirty. So first things first. Minneapolis, right? So you got this ring here, and what that represents is there are antique stores, and there are places you can go find badges and stuff in there, but it's harder to find them. If you go to an antique store, it's going to be very highly curated. It's going to be picked through. There's not going to be as good as stuff. You're not going to find these treasures. So you got to get way the heck over here. See this little town on the river here called Stillwater over there. And it's kind of tiny because it's a tiny town. And it's on the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And like so many towns that are this size across the whole country, it's a time capsule. You see things like this where it hasn't been ripped down and replaced with something shiny and new. It's still there. And on our journey today, it's just Maria and I, no children. Cool lift bridges. Stop one. We're going to go to American Gothic Antiques. And that's my awesome wife, posing, looking really cool in the middle there. And you get to the front desk. And you know it's going to be good, right? I mean, look at those ladies. They're not messing around. Look at those oil cans. You got badges right there. You got the praying guy. So things to keep in mind. Things to keep in mind when you're doing this. First of all, number one, you got to dig. You got to move things around, get down on the floor, look underneath things, ask to get in cases. The people who work at these places, they don't care. They just want you to hopefully buy something, But their job is to unlock these cases and stuff. You don't have to like try and angle through the window and block the light with your hand trying to get a good shot. You just have them open it up, take a nice, good shot. Just be nice, maybe spend like $5, buy a little can or tin or something tiny. And they don't care. But like most of the good stuff you're gonna find, it's like you gotta take that suitcase and open it up, and all of a sudden on the inside, there's that pretty badge. There's that pretty thing you're looking for. And it's not gonna be on the outside. And look how much stuff is there. Look at all those cans. You gotta dig in. Location matters. Design is regional. And we're talking back before everybody had Amazon Prime subscriptions, and everything was getting shipped, and it was all getting made in the exact same places, and everybody had the exact same teapot sitting on their kitchen stove. And people actually bought local things. And because of this, most design was unique to the region, because the designers were making those things. Like in Minnesota, we got 3M. You're gonna have a lot of local brands like that. At that Minnesota Pure Rotland said, oh, you're gonna see all that stuff when you're going badge hunting and antiquing and digging in Minnesota. But when you're across the country, like when I've done these talks and stuff, I've gone Houston, I've gone to Wichita, all over the place. And you're gonna find all sorts of really beautiful things. In Minnesota, you find a lot of Hamm's beer, because Hamm's was there, right? Look at that cooler, I should have bought it, right? Beautiful. And yeah, you find this stuff all over, like little St. Paul, Minnesota. That's a nice looking typewriter, isn't it? So it's not just antique stores. It could be a couple weeks ago, or last week, we went to a boat museum up near Duluth. And yeah, like a lot of really cool stuff, and not where you'd normally expect. Train yards. We were up by Duluth, obviously, the Iron Range, and we saw these beautiful badges on these old trains that were restored just sitting there. And who knows, maybe you'll be at the Circles conference someday, and you go find this guy in the hallway over there on the piano on the other side of that wall. Really pretty, though. So here's what I found at American Gothic Antiques. Now we're done. We're back on track here. Eagles. Obviously. We're talking World War II era, a lot of this stuff, so you're gonna see a lot of eagles. Type that fits in a shape. You see a lot of type that fits in a shape. The way that pen ray just sits in there nicely, and that type isn't stretched, They're re-hand drawing, it's all the line weights are consistent. It's really nice, you can learn a lot from looking at different fonts that are done that way. Long shadows. Hipster designers didn't start the trend. Hipster designers from the 1950s started that trend. And it was used a lot. It's nice. The off register is really nice in this one. Type is pattern. Look at that. Talk about retina burning. Goodness. Oops. Go back one. We'll get to that. Female urinals. With badges on them, right? That was kind of cool. Threw it in there. I like this unique geometric font. I thought that was inspiring, the way it's like each of those letters is just like this big, heavy chunk, The negative space is very tight, and they're all perfectly balanced. The A is fun. Lettering the small stuff rather than just using script fonts. You see a lot of this where even the smallest little thing on the bottom of something, it's all hand lettered. And I don't know if that was because it was just easier because of the technology at the time, or what, or if it was the way of the designer putting their signature on it just by having their handwriting, but I always think that's really beautiful. Organic registration. You look at something like that, you can't fake that with Photoshop. Look at that big hunk. Why? It's awesome though. Super duper condensed type. Look at that over there. Product of the USA. It's tall, peek up on the top shelf. And stop too. So the next place we're going, walking down the street, just down the road. I have no idea what the name of it was, but it said Antiques really vertically and big. It has that big chimney coming off the top. Here's what I found. A geometric script face with some nice space to it. I thought that was nice. I like that the E almost looks like a tiny little L, but you know it's an E. It mimics the exact shape of the H. That was nice. A tight bridge, because it wouldn't be any fun without that bridge in there, right? It's nice. Some nice chunky lettering. That was playful. I like the R. A lot of movement to it. You can really see the stroke of the brush. Underline as type container. Obviously, you see this a lot with like baseball jerseys. You know, and if you ever tried to do that before and put type into one of these things at the slant and trying to keep the weight of the type, it's hard. It's hard to make it look good. And you see it done poorly all the time, right? But like that's nice, the way that Chicago's coming through there. And all the line weights stay consistent. The O doesn't look too condensed in or anything. And then underline as type. You know, it's too hard to do the other thing. Boom. Just put the type there, put a little tail at the end. The underline is the type. That was kind of fun. Badges in badges. You got this SK badge in the SK badge. And then you got the pigs on the side badge, locking up that badge. The US inspected badge slammed in the bottom of that badge. And these on the side kind of badging it up just a little bit more. You got badges on badges. A lot of America. You see a lot of, same with the Eagles, you've seen a lot of stars and stripes. And obviously more Eagles. I like that it says select potatoes. You know, you probably couldn't do that anymore with the ingredients. But hey, they're nice. They're the select potatoes. We throw away the other ones. Hand-drawn type embellishment. I thought this was nice. The type's geometric, but just when you look at the hand-drawn aspect and here, the shading, all those lines, you know, it's sitting cross-hatching, a little shading. Overspray shading. You see this a lot with like Photoshop brushes. But I thought this was kind of interesting. I've never seen it done quite like this. That looks like somebody who took a pen and it was like doing all that stippling by hand because it's really not, I don't want to say a mess, but it's very unbalanced and it's very organic and it's very unique. So next place, a few weeks later, we took a second trip down to Northfield, Minnesota. And same kind of thing, location. You got Minneapolis up there, St. Paul, that kind of area, and we're going down to Northfield. So it's not quite as far, but it's out of the loop, it's out of that ring. And it's just far enough to start feeling like a small town and not an outer ring suburb. And there's a lot of character to all the buildings. And this time, I got my squad with, meaning I got a baby on my back and a couple boys with me, my wife taking a picture or two of me. So when you're seeing something like this, and you're like, oh, that's really nice. Look at that down this alley, and look at the details. Look how that type's set in there really nice, and it's a nice photo. This is the reality of, so it's me taking the picture and a couple of boys all getting a design education. You know, it's homeschool, right? And so here's what I found in Northfield. Got some fancy pants ligatures. Love this McNess one with that little C to N loopy-doop thing. Angles on angles. And so the angles in the badge, so you got these lines coming up, but then you got those lines mimicked in the branding itself around it. Same with those angles and those angles, angles on angles. You guys got it, right? An Intique search engine. You're like, okay, what's that? What's that? Old school Google, encyclopedia. Maria took that. She's like, this is so funny. Type is pattern, same thing. So this is exactly the same brand as that other one that we just saw, but this is an older version of it. Just kind of cool to see that it's the same sew packaging, but the font is a little bit different. It's a little bit more ornate. So seeing the evolution of that. Type outlines. You see a lot, like you're going to find this stuff, you find a ton of outline type, and you don't see a lot of this anymore. And I think the technical reason for that was to cover up off registration that wasn't that good, probably. And also to, you know, like how do we make it look more bold with few, you know, we don't have that many colors. Let's throw an outline on it. I mean, that could be the reasoning, same as like the hard shadows, but you see a lot of that. It's interesting. It's a way to, you know, set your stuff back and kind of have this feel. Illustrated wood grain. It's same technology. Nowadays they'd be like, yeah, we'll just put a photo of wood grain on there. Take a nice shot of some walnut and put on there. But back then, you can't do that. You have fewer colors. And so when you're doing this just right for a high-class smokers-only tobacco container, you got to hand draw all the wood grain, make it look really nice, print it on there so it looks really high-class. Every nook and cranny. And what I mean by that is you see a lot of design where it's like, we got some negative space, let's put something in there, right? This one says USA, it says label registered. The registered is broken, I love that, 1903. Then it says registered US Patent Office. You got US twice, you got registered twice. Then US, I don't know, something else more. It says registered again. It says registered like 3 times, USA like 3 times. It's pretty great. Mo words, mo awesome. I mean, look at that guy on the right there. And it's not like the type is even set fancy there. It's just like a brick of copy. Like, let's make a badge and throw this body copy right in the middle of it. It's kind of fun. Like 30 words. And then what I'm calling shape containers here. Taking a shape, putting some color in there to create these compartments where you can dump content and divide it off based off hierarchy, making the color contrast let you know which thing to look at first, along with the size of things. Bold stripes. I mean, that's going to stand out on the shelf, right? High contrast. You see like the numbering thing, you guys, like a number 2 pencil or this print white, probably number 1 size stamp pad. You see a lot of that for branded systems of the time, numbering their products or numbering the sizes. Type of shape, or type in shape, in case you didn't realize it's a napkin. It says napkins in it, right? But just a nice thing. I like to collect this stuff so I can look back on it. So when I'm doing a type in a shape, I can see, since this is all, like the line weight is staying consistent, they're keeping the thicker down here, a little thinner at the top, like how you're supposed to make a font correctly. I can look at, oh, here's how they do a nice slab sans serif, or if I'm making something more ornate, you don't want to stretch all the way to the edge because it'd be really distorted and look stupid, and you want to have this elegant feel, so you got to put a little bit of negative space on the top and bottom so it's not too far. It has a nice balance between getting wonky and looking right and following the balance. Halftone shading. And so I think this is the last one on that trip. And so taking only a 2-color design, but getting a 3rd color over just some dots. Just a nice, cool effect. And something you don't see a lot right now because they just put a 3rd color on there, right? Oh, I got another good one. Packages on packages. We had badges on badges, but packages on packages. You see this a lot. We're like trying to highlight a feature. So you got the package, and then on the package, you got an illustration of the package talking about the features of the package. Which I love that. I love that. So if you were to change the design, you'd have to change the illustration too. Okay, so then we're all done. Taking a minute to hang out afterwards. Josh got practice walking. I think he was up to about 7 steps at the time, and now he's walking all over the place a couple weeks later. So now what? We found all this stuff. It looked really cool. But what do you do with it? So application, let's make some logos. So here's where I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty. Assignment number 1, and what we're going to talk about is Witt's Realty. So not some gigantic brand. We're going to talk about my friend Josh, who has a realty company, contacted me, and he's like, hey, we need a logo and maybe some branding and maybe some signs. Can you walk us through the process? And it's like, sure. Here's how I do it. And I'll show you guys all the details, all the rounds, and kind of how I do it and how I set it up. So the first thing I like to do is I'll make a noun list and mood boards for my client. And so a noun list, what I mean by that is, let's say I'm doing a coffee shop, right? I'll make a list of like, oh, coffee grounds, coffee cup. Maybe the first initial of the coffee company is, it's called Osterman's, and it's an O or something like that. So if you just put an O in a circle, it would just be kind of bland, but like, how do you make it unique? Oh, what if the O and the negative space in the O is a coffee bean or something like that? So you can, once you have this noun list of icons that could represent your brand, you start to find visual overlaps and overlap them. So we just start with the noun list, and I explain that to my client, how we're going to use it, And then I do a few mood boards just to kind of see generally how they want their ideas skinned. So like I was talking about, you got, what does a hand look like with a bird? Those are a couple nouns put together. The cartwheel logo, Target cart with a smiling face on it. You got a V mountain, Pete's in a flame. You get the idea. And then you can do the same thing with like a crest or something like that, where the shape of it is one of those noun lists, or it could be typography too, where one of the letters plays off one of the nouns in your noun list or something like that. And so we start with, I do a huge noun list, my client does a huge noun list. We throw them all together, get rid of the duplicates, and we hop on the phone or meet in person. And if we meet in person, I always print out each one on a page by itself, and we'll lay them all out, and we'll get rid of anything that they're like, iffy about whatsoever. Try and get down to like 5 or 10 of like the best ones are like, what, like a nest for a realty company. It's kind of cool, but he didn't like it. It didn't make the final. Things like that. But a house, yeah, that makes sense. Why wouldn't you have a house on the list, right? As far as mood boards go, I presented 3 mood boards to him. One that's more of like a mid-century modern one with these angles, general color palette, a lot of organic shapes, things that are there just purely for aesthetic reasons rather than having to always have some sort of contextual or conceptual fallback where it's like, oh, this is there because it represents ... Second one is this very bold, modern approach based off saturation and geometry, very distilled down icons to their pure form without any extra BS, a lot of metaphorical content. I mean, like everything represents something in those. And then the third one, more of like a craftsman approach where it's less about iconography and more about typography and the way it's all put together, and the color palette's a little bit more punchy, reds and blacks. And so what did we land on? We narrowed it down just to these simple ones, right? Not too many to work with. I mean, you can see the list. And so those are our nouns. And then I have these mood boards where he kind of liked a little something from all of them, which usually you're just like, oh my gosh, just figure out your mind, make up your mind. But we talked through this together. He was like, I really like the mid-century modern, but I don't want the organic. And he's like, I really like the icons from 2, like that style, that middle. And I'm like, you could do that. Like you look at the Herman Miller logo, it's very minimal, it's very geometric, it has a sans serif face, and the icon would fit perfectly with these, and it looks great with mid-century modern. So I'm like, you can have that separate from, or you can have that. And they really like that too. He's like, let's look at the sketches, and maybe some sketches will fit better in one skin or the other. And then we go into a rough sketch phase. So I got my the last thing, I get that signed off on with the client. They know exactly what they're what's coming up as far as sketches. We haven't touched the computer really other than mood boards. And then I do 10 to 15 sketches. I usually do a whole lot more, but then I narrow it down to like a certain amount. At this point, we're just trying to figure out the icon, nothing more. Because that's the hardest thing to figure out, that thing that's in your little Twitter avatar that's just this minimal thing. And you can have a great logo and great aesthetics, but if you don't have a unique, ownable, trademarkable little icon, you don't have anything. So you gotta figure this out first. And so I sketch these all based off combining those nouns together. You got a W in a house, you got a keyhole in a W, stuff like that. Narrowed it down to 3 or 4. We landed on these 4. And then finally, we're hitting the computer at this point. So the client at this point knows exactly what they're getting. You don't have the uncomfortable situation where you're presenting your first round of logos and you got like 3 logos to present to them, and they see them and they hate 2 of them, and the other one they're stuck with, and they're like, yeah, I guess I have to do it. But then they just sit and revise it and just never get to something they're really happy with. At this point, they know exactly what they're getting. So option 1, option 2, option 3, and the one they liked, option 4. Didn't like the typography, but he had wanted the W and the house shape separate a little bit more, just so it's more obvious. You still get that nice caret arrow shape pointing up. Still looks like a house, still looks like a W at first glance. But he's like, hey, can we maybe skin it underneath some of those mood boards? Obviously, it makes sense, right? Let's do more exploration. I like doing that stuff. Revisions in color. So we'll come back with that one. And option 1. So here's like the Herman Miller approach, right? The really geometric sans serif, the icon is king, everything else is secondary. Taking that widths and bringing it up, making that more of a priority, still seeing icon, then widths, then realty. And then inspiring, based off some of the stuff we found, more of that mid-century modern organic angle shape thing that we have going here. And a few things that don't necessarily need to be there, like this script face. It's a little bit more fun. You got that great ligature from the W to I to T where it just kind of loops around. Some extra type in there. Fun shape for the sake of being a fun shape. And then the next one, inspired by these guys, you got the type and shape. You got this shape container thing that we found. And we got this one. And so he looks at these, and he's like, oh, man, I really like this one. He likes this one. And he goes and shows people. And obviously, you always tell your client, you're like, don't show everybody you know. But when it's your buddy, you're like, ah, whatever. And so he's like, my wife thinks it looks like a bottle cap. But I really like it. I'm like, that's not a problem. We can fix that. What we can do is we can explore shapes. And I had to explain to him, I'm like, the reason why it has those points on is they're mimicking that point in the house shape. They aren't there arbitrarily. Maybe there's a way we can pull that out even more. Maybe there's more points or less points or a new shape altogether, right? And then he liked the bottom color generally, but wanted to explore color a little bit more. And so final revisions, come back, some color options. Shape options. You got more and less points, and then you got these new shapes. He got his initial thing he had said was like, oh, why don't we just put it in a circle? I'm like, we can put it in a circle, but like, what could we do that might be a little bit ownable? And in the end, he really loved that top right one, which is kind of cool. It's ownable. You don't see that a whole lot. We got custom type in there. It has subtle rounded corners, mimics the subtle rounded corners of the icon. We got this great shape. It's ownable, mimics the icon. And all of a sudden, we got this special thing. And I always do like a nice modular system. So you don't just have this crazy badge that you have to work with. We're like, how you can do that with a Twitter avatar? You got your icon, you got your vertical, you got your horizontal. Looks great on mobile. You got all the different versions. All the versions for everybody. Everybody's happy, right? And as for branding, I was inspired by this angle on angle thing, right? I thought that was really cool. So like, how can we do that in a nice, bold, modern way? Just like these nice slabs of color. And so like for all his, like on his LinkedIn and Facebook profiles and Twitter profiles, just that nice big band image across the top. We got nice floods of color that mimic that shape. And of course, I got to finish it with a super happy client next to his fancy pants realty sign. Looking good. Great guy, Josh. So let's switch gears for a second. When I worked at Target, most of the work I did was very minimal, right? Like we talked about. This branding campaign uses crops of the bullseye with people going on it like a landscape. This summer campaign has these huge icons of summer in little Target carts. This spring campaign uses icons of summer just trimmed out of cut paper. And this last example was Target's latest branding campaign that I did that focused on the dots and the rings of the logo, but at no point ever shows an actual bullseye. It's because it's super minimal, right? So I'm doing all that stuff at work, and like these projects are big, long, like 9-month projects. I mean, where you're like, we do like tons and tons of rounds. We finally get to the one we want, and then we just go at like, we spend like a week figuring out wardrobe and a week figuring out makeup and casting, and we spend so much time just like in the details, getting everything perfect. And so I'm doing that, and at the same time, like I want to make some badges and stuff. I want to make this like more complicated stuff. I got to have my balance. And so I just got a laptop, and I was taking the bus to work, and I was like, hey, let's do some badges on the bus. And so I started making these almost every day, and it was fun switching up all styles and going to work at Target and doing these minimal things, hopping on the bus, making all sorts of fun badges and lockups. And some of them weren't great, and some of them were really fun, and some of them were portfolio worthy, And so the first project I'm going to talk about here is bike gangs. And, oops, spoiling all the good stuff. The idea was simple. make up, it was for Art Crank. It has to be a poster about bikes. So I made up fictitious bike gangs from neighborhoods in Minneapolis where people are like, hey, I live on Lindale Avenue in Minneapolis. I need to get this bike gangs poster, right? And so, bike gangs, right? And people liked it. I got like 12 new badges for my portfolio. And like anything else, you make your portfolio out of work the kind of work that you want to do, and people will hire you to do that same kind of work once you just jam-pack it full of that stuff. So I made some more because I really had a fun time making them. So I'm like, okay, so I've made 24, including the overprints, like 26 different bike gang badges. Like, okay, I made enough bike gangs, right? What do we need to do next? And so switched up a little, and it's like, all right, I like badge hunting. I like finding this stuff, but there's not a whole lot of people doing it. And like some people are doing, they're calling it junking. Some people are doing it, they're calling it type hunting. People hashtag it, all sorts of different things. But the whole point of it is it's a great resource for you to, like, if you want to work on a project, you don't want to go through Pinterest and you want to find some examples of stuff to get inspired by, and maybe you don't have the time to go digging through an antique store. You can go on there, you can click on some universal tag, and you can look through a bunch of stuff and get inspired. And so how do we get other people doing this and make it a thing? Why not make nice little city badge hunting clubs? Kind of like the bike gangs, but badge hunting. We got Minneapolis, beautiful Portland, a nice ruby ring for New York City. Made this one on the plane going out to Denver for the AIJ leadership retreat. Badges on the plane. One for Seattle that has like that, the space needle thing. Or is it space? Yeah. Chicago, Illinois. My buddy Kevin was from Rhode Island, so he's like, you gotta make a Rhode Island one. So I made a Rhode Island one. I spoke in Texas down in Houston a couple years ago, and the AIJ group was like super cool, and we spent the entire, I went down there on like a Friday, and then we spent the entire weekend afterwards. They flew me back after the weekend and badge hunted like in all these small towns, Galveston, down right on the coast there and stuff like that. They're awesome, and it was cool of them to do that. Great AIJ group. Los Angeles, got a little film and wave motif. Of course, Golden Gate for San Fran. Got heart of the country, Wichita, Kansas, right? You got to have the stars and stripes on that beast. And Austin was jealous of Houston. They needed one, and so we got a nice Lone Star up there. Ohio, love Ohio. You got Type Hunter and Marmalade Blue. And when we were getting ready for this event, I was like, gotta do one from Minnesota. Just trying to get back into it. I'm like, I haven't done one of these for a while. Let's do a Minnesota badge hunting one. And then one of my buddies from Nebraska was like, you gotta do one from Nebraska. I'm like, all right, Nebraska it is, right? And then one other one that most people have never seen, I did this one on the bus, and then my computer crashed. So I got a screen, like a photo of my laptop screen. But it's kind of fun. Indy, the other Appleus, I have it on there, like just to make my buddy Bob Ewing a little grumpy, because he's like, it was the first Appleus. They came across the country this way. And what else could I do on the bus? I was doing all this social media for Target Canada at work, so I was like, let's do some social media posts for badge hunting, right? Nice badges, bro. Let's go digging for some gems. Stars and crowns and eagles. John Candy, take a picture to last longer. And because it sounds way cooler than antiquing. You don't want to call it that, right? So what's the future? That's kind of up to you guys. You can use it as a resource, like I was saying. There's over 8,000 posts to dig through on Instagram, lots of good stuff. It's great for mood boards, for inspiration, to find styles that aren't being repeated over and over again, things that like lost trends that might have never been done for 40, 50 years. And you can also contribute if you happen to see some awesome oil can or like a piano in the hallway or whatever. Take a pic, hashtag it badge hunting, super easy. Post on Instagram. Not much to it. So that's that. Thank you very much.